The candlelight flickered across Margaret's weathered hands as she sat alone in her small apartment, staring at the single cupcake she'd bought herself from the corner store. 80 years old today. 80 years of birthdays, and this one felt like the loneliest of them all. Her daughter lived 3 states away, consumed by her own busy life. Her friends had slowly disappeared over the years, claimed by time and circumstance. But Margaret had made herself a promise: she wouldn't spend this milestone alone in these 4 walls. She would go to Romano's, the elegant Italian restaurant downtown where she and her late husband had celebrated their anniversary every year for 4 decades. She would wear her best dress, order the seafood linguine, and toast to the life she'd lived. What she didn't expect was to be turned away at the door. The evening had started with such hope. Margaret had carefully applied her lipstick, the coral shade Henry had always loved, and pinned her silver hair into an elegant twist. The emerald dress she'd saved for special occasions still fit perfectly, and as she looked in the mirror, she could almost see the young woman she'd once been staring back at her. The taxi ride to Romano's felt like a journey back in time, past the park where Henry had proposed, past the church where they'd married, past all the ghosts of a beautiful life. But when she arrived at the restaurant's entrance, the hostess barely looked up from her podium. "Do you have a reservation?" she asked mechanically, her fingers dancing across a tablet screen. "No, I don't, but I was hoping," Margaret began. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We're fully booked tonight. Weekends are always our busiest." The young woman's voice was polite but dismissive, her eyes already scanning past Margaret to the couple approaching behind her. Margaret's heart sank. "It's my birthday," she said quietly, immediately feeling foolish. "My 80th birthday. My husband and I used to come here every year, and I just thought I could sit at the bar perhaps, or wait for a table." The hostess's expression softened slightly, but she shook her head. "The bar is full too, and we have reservations backed up for hours. Maybe try calling ahead next time." She was already greeting the couple, who apparently did have a reservation, leading them past Margaret into the warm, glowing interior of the restaurant. Margaret stood frozen in the doorway, feeling the cold autumn wind cut through her dress. Through the windows, she could see families laughing over wine, couples holding hands across tables, the life and warmth she'd hoped to be part of, even for just one evening. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She turned to leave, pulling her coat tighter around her shoulders. "Excuse me, ma'am. Please wait." The voice belonged to a young man who had been standing near the entrance, a little boy of about 6 clinging to his hand. He had kind eyes and looked exhausted, the way parents of young children often do, with rumpled clothes and hair that suggested this dinner out was a rare occasion. "I couldn't help but overhear," he said, approaching Margaret. "Did you say it's your 80th birthday?" Margaret nodded, embarrassed to be having this conversation with a stranger. "It's silly, really. I should have made a reservation." "No, it's not silly at all." The man looked down at his son, then back at Margaret. "My name's David, and this is my son, Tyler. We have a reservation for 2, but our table is for 4 people. Would you like to join us? I know we're strangers, but nobody should spend their 80th birthday alone." Margaret was so surprised she could barely speak. "Oh, I couldn't possibly intrude on your evening. Please." Tyler piped up, his small voice earnest. "We don't mind sharing. Daddy always says the bigger the table, the better the party." David smiled, and Margaret saw something familiar in his eyes, a loneliness that mirrored her own. "Tyler's right. And honestly, we'd be honored. Today's actually a tough day for us too. It would have been my wife's 35th birthday. She passed away 2 years ago, and we're trying to celebrate her memory, but it's hard with just the 2 of us." In that moment, Margaret understood. These weren't just kind strangers offering her charity. They were 2 souls who understood loss, who knew what it meant to face an empty chair at the table, who were extending a hand across the gulf of loneliness that had swallowed all 3 of them. "Then I accept," Margaret said, her voice thick with emotion. "And thank you." The hostess looked bewildered when David announced they were now a party of 3, but she led them to a corner booth with a perfect view of the restaurant's twinkling lights. As they settled in, something magical began to happen. Tyler, with the unfiltered honesty of childhood, started asking Margaret questions about her life, and she found herself sharing stories she hadn't told in years. She told them about Henry, about their 4 children, about the bookstore they'd owned together, about the trip to Paris they'd taken for their 50th anniversary. David shared his own stories, about meeting his wife in college, about her battle with cancer, about learning to be both mother and father to Tyler. The boy chimed in with memories of his mom, innocent and heartbreaking, how she used to make pancakes in funny shapes, how she sang off-key in the car, how she always said kindness was the most important thing in the world. As the evening progressed, something extraordinary unfolded. David ordered champagne, and they toasted to Margaret's 80 years, to his wife's memory, to the unexpected connections that make life worth living. When the waiter brought out a slice of tiramisu with a candle for Margaret's birthday, Tyler insisted on singing, his small voice carrying across the restaurant until other diners joined in, strangers united in celebration of a woman they'd never met. Margaret felt tears streaming down her face, but for the first time in months, they were tears of joy. This wasn't the birthday she'd planned. It was better. Because in her loneliest moment, when she'd felt invisible and forgotten, 2 people had seen her. They'd recognized her humanity, her worth, her need to be celebrated and remembered. When the check came, David refused to let Margaret contribute. This was a gift, he said firmly. For all of us. You gave Tyler and me something we didn't even know we needed tonight, the reminder that new family can be found anywhere, even in the most unexpected places. As they left the restaurant, Margaret hugged them both tightly. She pressed a piece of paper into David's hand, her phone number and address. Please, she said, don't let this be the last time. I have 80 years of stories left to tell, and Tyler, I make excellent chocolate chip cookies. David's eyes glistened. We'd love that. Tyler needs a grandmother, and I think we all need each other. Walking to her taxi, Margaret looked back at the father and son waving goodbye under the streetlight, and she realized something profound. She'd come to this restaurant seeking an echo of the past, a connection to the life she'd lost. Instead, she'd found the future, a reminder that family isn't always about blood, that kindness creates bonds stronger than any reservation list, and that it's never too late to find your people. Sometimes the table we're denied leads us to exactly where we're meant to be. And sometimes, the greatest gift we can give or receive is simply the recognition that none of us should have to celebrate, grieve, or exist alone. Margaret had come seeking a meal. She'd found a family. And in the mathematics of the heart, that equation would always add up to something beautiful.